Hello, and welcome to the East Africa Business Podcast. This show is all about showcasing entrepreneurs who are building businesses in this exciting part of the world. From reading high-level articles about the region, it can be difficult to really understand what's going on. And so my hope is that these interviews somewhat bring it to life, as well as stoking your curiosity to go find out more. On that, do take a look in the archive for more episodes that we've done. But for now, let's enjoy the rest of this funky intro music and then get started with the show. Most people have somewhat underwhelming memories of school lunches. Bland, uninteresting food which likely compelled you to go off at break time to the local shop to eat sugary doughnuts, a chocolate bar, and a bag of crisps, or chips for our American listeners. This dynamic is somewhat similar in the Ruira county of Kenya, just outside the capital, Nairobi. The difference, though, is that the option of meals at school is non-existent. That is until Wawira Njiru started Food for Education, an organisation that provides nutritious and affordable meals to 1,600 school kids every day. She and I cover all parts of the operation, including setting up relationships with schools, the economies of scale in their food production, and how the school meal programme is funded by their for-profit catering business, as well as, indirectly, from the Lonely Planet travel guide company. This episode is a great example of an organisation stepping in to fill a market need with the help of other interested parties. Wawira and I talk about how she feels there is not a wholly sustainable business model in just providing affordable lunches in rural schools, but I think you'll agree after listening that undertaking creative ways to make it sustainable, including lessons from India, is a good thing for the world. Anyway, without any further ado, here is Wawira from Food for Education. So we're here today with Wawira from Food for Education. Wawira, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So just to get us started, can you tell us a bit about you and a bit about Food for Education?
So I'm 27 years old, born and raised in Kenya. And I like to think of myself as Kenyan through and through. Food for Education is an organization I started in 2012 while doing my degree in nutrition and food sciences in Australia, a very distant country from Kenya. And I was there doing my degree and I really wanted to do something back home. So I started this organization because I was learning about the impact of nutrition on children and also relating that with what I'd grown up seeing in terms of children lacking opportunities because they could not get proper education, and knowing that food was a major barrier to kids getting education. And so I started this in 2012, did a small fundraiser, started feeding 25 kids, and then right now we feed 1,600 children from next month. So yeah,
so
it's grown.
In a sentence, you provide school food?
Yes. Yeah, we just give lunch to kids for them to stay in school. Yeah.
Understood.
Yeah.
So, Food for Education. Okay, and so you say it's been going for about 5 years, 6 years?
Yes. So it's been going for about 5 to 6 years, but a lot of that time I've been doing my degree. I came back, started my master's, and so I started working on it full time when I came back. And then 2016 we started getting our team ready and things like that. So it's been in many. It's a smaller growth than most startups, most organizations, mostly because I started it when I was 21. Yeah.
Understood. Okay. So you currently have your organisation.
Yeah.
And then that goes in that. You say 1,600.
Yeah.
School kids.
Yeah.
Fed. And how they're getting fed every day?
Daily, yes. Okay. Yeah, they're getting fed daily. Yeah.
So, is that all at one school?
No, it's in 4 different schools. So what we do is we produce food in one kitchen and then transport it to 4 different schools. And yeah.
Okay. And what does lunch look like?
Lunch is more exciting now than it used to be. It's githeri with meat once a week, githeri with fruit, rice and beans, rice and dengu, which is vegetables. Githeri is maize and beans with vegetables. So we cook that together. It's a very local dish, but also very nutritious. And then we serve them with meat and fruit, and also serve rice twice a week to spice it up. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. And if food for education wasn't there, what would they be having for lunch?
So most of them would not be having lunch. They'd be having either nothing or having like a small donut or, you know, just something to kind of fill their tummies for lunchtime. What used to happen before we started is a lot of kids would run away from school, go because the school that we started with was near a market. So they'd run away to the market, go start looking for food, run away to the town. It's also close to the town, go look for food, or they just basically sleep during the afternoon lessons because they were so disinterested in education. I remember once we saw a kid who was just like, when we started, who just like was lying on the ground, like just going like, I don't want to do anything, you know, I'm too hungry. But now many of them are, I mean, all of them are in class learning and, you know, getting an education, which every child, sounds simple, but every child should have that, yeah.
And when you came to sort of picking the first school to work with, how did you choose this one?
Yeah. So we started, our first kitchen was in a church because I had more local connections. I mean, I was living in Australia. I didn't really know the public schools very well. I went to school in that area, but went to a private school. And so didn't know the public schools very well. And so started in a church because we had connections to that church. And so the school that was the first school was picked based on proximity because the children would walk to the church to have their lunch. Yeah.
Oh, so does the lunch take place at school?
Yes, now it does. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So in 2012, we built that small kitchen. And then in 2015, we started building a bigger kitchen in the school. So this kitchen that we work with from now is in one of the schools. And then we transport to the other schools.
I see. What does the school think about it?
They love it. I mean, it addresses, imagine being a teacher in a class and you have all this information that you want to give to students, but they actually can't listen, you know. You might like prepared, you know, teaching materials or things like that, but none of it matters because these children are hungry. And so a lot of teachers, a lot of parents, they come to us with the feedback that it makes it so much easier for them to teach. And also for students, they say it makes it so much easier for them to concentrate. So it sounds simple, but if you are sitting in even in your office and you are hungry, you wouldn't be able to listen to anything anyone is saying. So it just makes, you know, school what it's supposed to be, a place where children can learn. Yeah.
Okay. In terms of sort of regulation or red tape, what sort of things do you have to prove to the school before you could come in and start serving kids food?
I mean, for the schools that we work with, there are things like, you know, looking at our kitchen, the facilities that we're cooking in are healthy for the kids. But for a lot of them, because they don't have any other facilities either way, they're not very fussy. But we do that in terms of because we have standards to maintain with the Ministry of Health, with the Ministry of Education, because we're providing meals in schools. Imagine if all 1,600 kids got food poisoning one day or something like that. So, I mean, we keep our standards, but with the schools, one of the things was like when we were building a kitchen in the schools, in the school that we built it in, we had to get like approval from the Ministry of Education. And then also, because it's public land, it's not our kitchen, it's the school's kitchen. And so, because you can't really own property in public land. So things like that, like to have that documented, to have everyone sign on board with that. But because it's sadly, it's a very desperate situation for the schools. They really want someone to come and take over. There's not as much red tape with that, but you just have to have all your ducks in a row for the Ministry of Health and for government regulations. Yeah.
Okay. And so, did you say that you're using that kitchen to do the cooking, or is that mainly did you say that you're cooking it centrally and then it's being distributed? Which one is it?
We're cooking centrally in that kitchen in the school.
So that is the centre.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And so, I mean, so you're saying 1,600?
Yeah.
I'm trying to visualise how much food that is.
It's a lot.
Yeah. How do you, where do you get it from?
So we source from, we source from local farmers as much as we can. That's our first priority, and then we have suppliers who source regionally as well. I mean, from if there's not something that's not available in Kenya, we'll sometimes when there's like a drought in Kenya or things like that, we'll source regionally. So mostly from local farmers around Kenya, trying to get that local produce, connect farmers to markets in terms of we are the market, but also we're providing this much needed service to children in schools. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm trying to sort of picture the different moving parts in your business. So you've got one is sort of the food sourcing, one is the sort of the school relations, should we say. What are some of the other important aspects or some of the other bits that make up the organisation?
So another really important bit is that we run a social enterprise, which is a food delivery and catering business in Nairobi, and the profits we make usually go to food for education. So the business is called Double Portion. So that's a really critical moving part of the whole organization working, because the profits we make essentially sustain us. So we have to keep, making business, getting customers. And so that business runs from a different kitchen, not from the kitchen where the school runs. And that business has its own staff, has its own leader in terms of like a management and things like that. And so that's also a really important other moving part. And then the other part that's important is distribution. Once you prepare meals, you have to distribute the meals, and then make sure they're hot, the kids get them when they're really hot, because one of the things we're promising these kids is that you get a hot meal for lunch. If, for example, before the ones who would bring from home, and it would be like in a little plastic container that, the food gets cold by lunchtime and things like that. So we're promising like a nice hot meal. So it has to get to them hot, it has to be nutritious and things like that, yeah.
How do you ensure that it gets that hot? Is it just a time thing, or do you have to...
It is both time, and also like our van is insulated to make sure that it remains hot. The van that we transport the meals with. Also for our business, we have insulated motorbikes with our carriers, so they're able to maintain heat. And then the containers that we pack food with in our, they're big like aluminium containers, like tiffin boxes sort of. And so we will transport in those, and by the time they get to the kids, they'll remain at almost the same temperature as they left us. Yeah.
And is it food for education staff who are serving the food?
In two of our schools we serve food, and then in two of the schools the teachers serve food. Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
And this is probably getting into it too much. Do you own like the metal things and everything?
Yeah.
You own all those?
Yeah.
Understood.
Yeah.
And do you own the van?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
How much is the van? How much is an installation?
I mean, in total, plus installation, it's around 2 million shillings, which is around $20,000. Yeah, yeah.
And I mean, that sounds like quite a big expenditure.
Yeah.
So how did that come about?
I mean, so it's a one-off expenditure that was high, but in terms of reducing our cost per plate, it's really helped reduce that. So if we were cooking in every school, we'd be spending around 40 cents per child, and we're spending around
40 cents per day.
Yeah, per child, and we're spending around 25 right now. So it was a one-off, $20,000 expense, but it saved us a lot of money, because per child we're saving around 15 cents every single day. And so because we're a non-for-profit, we got a grant to be able to buy the van and be able to start transporting the meals. But it's really like one of those things that you can't really do the other alternative, which is having kitchens in every school, because it becomes much more difficult to manage everyone, manage supply, manage, stock and things like that. It's like having 4 different restaurants that you have to manage versus having just one where, you just manage serving time, which is usually around 15 minutes. Yeah.
Okay, nice. Who gave you the grant?
It's an organization in Australia called YGAP. Yeah.
YGAP.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
YGAP, Youth Against Poverty? I don't know. Something like that. Yeah, but they were funded. I mean, the grant came through them, but by Planet Wheeler, which is many people would know Lonely Planet.
Yeah.
So the couple that that started Lonely Planet started a foundation called Planet Wheeler, and Planet Wheeler gave YGAT the grant to give it to us. Yeah. So it's a long
So
connection.
people who read Lonely Planet books.
Yeah.
Inadvertently.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. But Lonely Planet was bought off by the BBC in
Was it? Oh, I'm very sorry.
years ago. So I mean, they're reading BBC. It's like people who read the BBC because the BBC had to buy it for like $400 billion. It was
so
ridiculous.
every time someone clicks on BBC the article, they're helping.
Yes. Yes.
I'm sure everyone can do that.
Yeah. Much easier than reading a Lonely Planet book every time. Yeah.
Very cool. Okay, so in terms of, so you mentioned there about the pricing. What's the rough, if you call it business model? Like, what are sort of the economics involved with, cost of you making a meal, having it delivered, etc. What are sort of some rough numbers there?
Okay, so I mean, it depends on what we're looking at. For our school meals program, I mean, it's 25 cents. That covers the cost of.
So 25 cents.
Yeah, per meal.
That's like a quarter of a shilling.
Yeah.
Okay, and a shilling is.
Not a quarter of a shilling. It's 25 cents. 25 shillings.
Oh, 25 shillings.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
So 25 US cents.
Yes. And so for that covers labor, the food, just the cost of us basically getting that food from the farmer and getting it to the child's hands for them to eat it.
And this is doing it at, so I imagine
at 1600, yeah.
1600. And so, what did it look like at 100?
We're at 100 shilling. At 100.
So when it was I imagine
when it was so small, yeah. When it was so small, it was around 40 cents. Okay. Yeah. So the cost of running, kitchen. When we were doing a small kitchen, we were doing around 40 cents per plate. That was very expensive for us, and so it's really cut down our cost over the last couple of years, expanding our kitchen, because that was in our little kitchen that I started when I did the small fundraiser in Adelaide, Australia, and so in the church that we were at, and so with 25 cents, we're able to now move food from the farmer to the child, and with our business, the average cost of a meal when we're selling it is around $3 to paying customers, so that's 300 Kenyan shillings, and we make a profit of around 30 to 40% from every
Right. So roughly, you have the one should we say for-profit business?
Yeah.
Where each meal
is giving us around 30 to 40%.
Yeah, it's about 100 shillings.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's being used to fund.
Yeah.
Okay, so both meals are the same.
No, they're not the same. I mean, for $3 versus 25 cents, you'll prepare very different meals. It's just like, it's still Kenyan food. So for our business, we still sell Kenyan meals, but they're just done with more of a twist, more of an individualized sense. Mm-hmm. But with the children, we're trying to make the meals more exciting, which has been, challenging because of the cost. You still want to keep costs down because you're having to pay for these meals. And so we've added things like meat this term that the kids are really excited about, things like bananas every week or any other fruit every week, and adding more vegetables and, providing, because one of the feedback we got is like they don't like dairy as much as they like rice. So providing that at least twice a week so that they can, feel happy. And so we've found more ways to treat children, because I think for a lot of times, school meals, many people who used to have school meals, even for me, like you have bad memories of them, you're just like, ew, it was disgusting. So we're trying to make healthy food not disgusting to kids, and make them excited about eating good food. Yeah.
Yeah. And do you think is there room for the cost to come down if you were to expand even further?
Yeah.
Like, what do you think is sort of a lower limit that you can get to?
So right now we think, our next phase of growth is we're looking to establish a county-wide school feeding program. We're still trying to talk to different counties to see where we're going to settle. But with that, we're looking at a scale of up to around 50,000 meals every day, and looking at how that can go down to almost half of what we're doing. So that's around we're looking at 12 to 15 shillings per plate. And so that will help us, really reduce the cost of meals. Depending on the county, obviously this will be determined by how far the county is from, a place where we can get food, and the kind of conditions in terms of roads, getting food to schools and things like that, how many kitchens we need to build, because of how the population is distributed and things like that. But if, for example, if you were doing, let's say, Nairobi County, which most schools are easy to access, then it would be around 12 to 15 shillings for like 50 to 100,000 kids. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And on the should we call it the revenue side, you say is it fully funded by the for-profit business?
Not yet. It's not fully funded because we started the for-profit in March. So it's still it's making profit, but not yet making enough profit to subsidize 1,600 meals every day. But that's something that we're working on right now to be able to grow our for-profit to be able to subsidize more meals.
I see. So are the kids currently paying?
Yeah.
Okay. How much are they paying?
15 cents.
15 cents.
Yeah.
Or 15 shillings.
15 shillings. Yeah.
Okay. But the idea is to get that down to 0.
Yeah, to 0 to 5. We still want parents to have a stake in it. And so we found at the beginning, we started with things like getting parents to come volunteer, which they were not very consistent with that. And anyone who's run a for-profit knows that it's very difficult to ask someone who's, looking for a job to feed their family to come and work for free, and things like that. Even if you're feeding their child, they don't think of it like that. They think like, I still have other children to feed, And so finding, putting a price to what we were providing made it much easier for them. So it's 15 shillings when food prices are high, and then 10 shillings normally. And so we're looking to now take that to 5 or less than 5 to be able to reach more kids. Because even in the schools that we work with, of the 1,600, only 2 who are fully sponsored by a Kenyan corporate can eat the whole school eats. The rest of them, it's not all the numbers. So all the kids are not eating at the schools. The barrier is price. Okay. Yeah.
And Sam, how do you collect payment? Every day do they come and drop 10 bob in?
Yeah. Yeah, it's the most easiest thing because a lot of parents will have a lot of maybe 4 kids in primary school. So if you ask them to pay per week or per month, then that's a big number. But if you ask them to give you just 10 shillings every day, that's much easier. A lot of kids will, because also of the price and because of how vulnerable they are, a lot of kids will share the price. So someone will come with 5 shillings, another one will come with 5 shillings, and then they'll share the meal because the servings are quite generous. So they're enough. I mean, some of them carry that home for dinner. Some of them, will eat the food if they haven't had breakfast or something like that. But others will share, so they'll eat and then give it to their friend or to their sister or to their sibling. Yeah.
And this is happening, lunchtime is what, 12:30 to 1:30?
Yeah, 12:40 to 1:30. So
and that's the same all
yeah.
Okay, so does that make it a bit more logistically difficult to get to?
We've learned at the beginning it was difficult because some schools would get their lunch at 1 and the kids have been waiting for 20 minutes outside, waiting for lunch and things like that. And so we really had to streamline our process to make sure that the last school gets lunch at 12:40.
What were the elements of streamlining?
So in terms of making sure that the van leaves earlier, the good thing with our van being insulated and having the containers, even if we leave at, let's say, 10 o'clock, the food will still be hot by the time the kids are getting it. So that really helped in terms of making sure, because quality is a big concern when you're serving food, especially to children. Like I said, if we had food poisoning, it would be a disaster. It would be the worst thing ever. So luckily, we've never had that because we make sure that our processes are right in terms of production. And we're following, the Ministry of Health guidelines. And so when we one of the things was making sure that the cooks start a bit earlier and then they're able to leave earlier in the evening. And that helps in terms of when the time the food is ready, the time it's packed into the van, and the time it leaves, the driver leaves with the food. Yeah.
Got it. Very cool. Since you started it, what's been the biggest surprise?
Good question. The biggest surprise, I think, for me has been how, I think I put in a lot of thought before starting, and in terms of like getting everything ready and how much that did matter in terms of like how much you put, you just want to have everything, anticipate every challenge that's going to come in the way and things like that. And then once you start, it's basically you're learning along the way, challenges pop up. The thing you thought would happen doesn't happen, and a good thing that you thought.
What's some examples of that?
I mean, I thought, for example, when we started up, my biggest goal was to feed 100 kids. And then I was like, I'm going to retire after that, go find a nice beach somewhere and lie and be like, fed 100 kids, But then realizing that, there was had the ability to do more, that people were ready to support our work, and that there was the need to do more. And so, now starting to stretch a goal in terms of thinking from 100, now start thinking about, 1,000, almost 2,000, 1,600. And then from then, I think last year, my biggest goal was to feed 1 million kids. And then we started thinking about how we can do county to county, then work with the national government, which we've started talking to about scaling nationally. And then started thinking that the 20 million children in Kenya, we're probably not going to feed 1 million. We're probably going to feed more than 1 million kids and things like that. And so learning that, pushing my boundaries of what I thought was possible. And last year I went to India to see an organization we just partnered with that feeds 1.6 million children every day. And now seeing 1.6 million children, 1.6 million meals in production and distribution and things like that was very eye-opening for me and kind of pushed my boundaries of what I thought was possible. So that has been surprising in terms of, it's been a journey of thinking I know everything at one point, and then having this experience that kind of makes you feel, oh shit, I need to open my eyes more and broaden my perspective and think bigger. Yeah.
Makes sense. From your knowledge of how to make and distribute school meals,
mm-hmm.
I mean, at the moment it's being subsidised by the for-profit business.
Yeah.
Is it possible to make a fully sustainable business in providing affordable school meals? Or will it always need to be subsidised from other entities?
I think that it's possible depending on the schools that you're looking at. If you're looking at, I have a friend who's working with private schools, and that's a fully sustainable, even profitable business in terms of providing meals, which I think that would kind of make it less stressful for schools in terms of having meals, provided to them. It depends on the schools that you're looking at. Even just a few public schools are not as bad as the ones we serve. But because we started as, we wanted to make sure that children who didn't have lunch. That's why we focus on the schools that we do. But it's definitely possible depending on the kind of schools that you look at. The friend that I'm talking about is looking at Nairobi schools. So Nairobi schools, which are low income, private, affordable, low cost, affordable schools. Private schools would be more, you could definitely make a sustainable model. If you're producing food at 25 cents, I'm sure schools are paying more than that right now for food in schools. And so it's definitely a way of, it could be a very profitable business for someone to do. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So there goes a business idea. Yeah.
Well, it's more just in terms of, when you're looking at for example, the organisation in India,
mm-hmm.
Again, are they doing it, I don't want to say fully sustainably, but mm-hmm. Or are they also getting subsidies?
Oh, they get so many subsidies by the Indian government. And so
it's more of public-private?
Yeah,
Interesting.
very public-private, yeah. And as like their website says, it's a public-private partnership. Yeah. So they get 60% funded by the Indian government and then 40% funded by Indian corporates. So India has a very strong law about corporates giving back, I think, 2.4% of their profits to CSR.
It sounds quite specific.
Yes, it is very specific, yeah. And I think that's something that we should have here as well, because, it's done a lot for Indian schools, Indian education, because, corporates just have to give back. It's not something that they have to think as an afterthought, what's our CSR department doing this year? Oh, we'll shelve it for next year and things like that. So they have to so if you go to India and see the schools, I think they're much better than the schools here, because there's been a lot of investment in terms of, classrooms and things like that, how kids are learning. And then the government of India does give funding for the midday meal school feeding program, which they say is the largest investment, the most beneficial investment they've ever made in education in India. And so if the government of Kenya wanted to make a beneficial investment in education, wouldn't be laptops or, every other thing that I feel like people get distracted by. It's just like give kids food first and then do the rest. Yeah.
And are there any other organizations in Kenya that are doing something similar? You mentioned a few of your friends who are doing it in the private school.
Yeah.
How are other rural schools trying to solve this problem of kids not having food?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on where the rural schools are. So if the rural schools are like in Nyeri, which is a food producing area, they won't have problems of food in schools, children lacking food, because there's food everywhere. Like a kid could go and pick a banana from a tree and start eating it because there's food everywhere. But Kenya has only around 20% arable land. And so a lot of the country, a lot of rural areas, kids won't have meals. And so, kids are going hungry around the country. Around the continent, 23 million children are going to school hungry. A lot of them, more children are not going to school because of hunger. And so there is organizations that are working towards that. We have Feed a Child, we have the World Food Program, we have some local organizations as well, some schools that are sponsored, for example, by different organizations. But we're trying to bring the innovation that we've seen in India with this organization that provides so many meals at scale, bring that innovation, because they incorporate tech very heavily. They're able to do it basically at Six Sigma standards and be able to produce the meals really well. And so we're trying to bring that innovation here and offer a way of distributing food that is, healthy, and make sure that from the farmers who are selling the food to us, to the children who are receiving the food, that everyone is benefiting from a system where food insecurity reduces, which is at 51% right now around the country. So
was that 51%?
Of Kenyans are food insecure.
Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds like it's a definition. Like
what is food insecurity? Yeah. They're not getting adequate nutrition in a day. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so we've spoken a bit about what sort of your sort of path to be going further forward. What closer to home? What are the next 6 months?
Oh, the next 6 months are. As I mentioned, we're looking to launch a county-wide program. We're talking to counties. So next 6 months is a lot of working with counties, different counties, and seeing which is the best fit for us. And now making a rollout plan. We're also now working more closely with the Indian organizations. So they'll be coming here in the next 6 months to
What are they called?
Akshaya Patra.
Okay.
Yeah. So they'll be coming here. We're finalizing an MOU with them. So them coming to be able to consult with us to design our rollout plan in a county-wide school feeding program. And then what we're doing is we're investing in the infrastructure of setting up that program, but asking the county government to invest in the recurring expenditure, which is the cost of food, because a lot of county governments have allocation in their budgets for that, but don't have the expertise to be able to implement. And so the next 6 months is basically just kind of finalizing that, and then now starting the construction, and the setting up of the school feeding program in that county to be able to see if we can roll out around mid next year.
And over the summer holidays, does the business stop?
The school holidays, our school feeding program stops. So it's stopping next week because schools close, which is usually like a bit of a relief because there's a break. It's not a relief for me, but it's just like in terms of cost, you're like, at least there's no spending of so much money. But our for-profit business does not stop all through the year, except during public holidays and things like that and weekends. But yeah.
Great stuff. And people listening at home, how can they read more about food for education, learn more, etc.?
Yeah, you can go to our website. It's www.food4education.org, or you can go to our Facebook, which is just Food for the Word for Education, or Twitter, Food for Education, or basically just any social media or on our website. Yeah.
Fantastic. And I'll link to those in the show notes as well.
Yeah.
Well, Wawira, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Before we head, just a quick moment to say thank you for listening. You can see show notes for this episode by heading to www.samfloy.com/podcast. That's samfloy.com/podcast. If you'd like to learn more about the podcast and stay updated on future episodes, as well as a few other things like behind-the-scenes pictures, then please check out our Facebook page. Search for the East Africa Business Podcast, and you can like it from there. Finally, if you felt this was a good episode, then please do leave a rating for the show on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. It helps others like you find the show, and I, for one, would really appreciate it. In any case, have a great week and speak to you soon.